So here's a couple of my Game Boy Colors, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually change the case on them. I have one right here, and this one here, now those aren't scratches. I actually never took the film off of this, but this one here was really beat up. This was all scratched up, the screen was. It was missing its battery door, which seems to be very common with the ones I get. I get a lot of these used and stuff. So I actually ordered this and replaced it. Well, I have another one here, and well, I actually have a couple more here. And you'll see mismatching door, mismatching door. When I was younger, I got Tetris for Christmas, and my mom actually liked it so much, she wore the buttons out on it. And so she got me another one. She felt bad, but then she played that one too. And then eventually, she picked up this Game Boy Color back when, well, you can still pick these up fairly cheap. They're actually not worth that much. But she got a good deal on it with Tetris. And when she stopped using playing the game, and we're talking years later, she let me have the Game Boy Color since she felt bad. She always wore mine out. But this one here, actually, she always took really good care of it. The only downfall is, you know, the battery. It's not the original battery door, but not a big deal. I'll eventually come up with one of those. In fact, this is off of the case this came in because the battery door was one of the few things that actually looked good. But you can actually see where some cleanup, who had it, tried doing cleanup, and it's all worn out and stuff. But this one we're not going to touch just because I like the story behind it. This one here, on the other hand, everything is actually not too bad on the front. Dirty buttons and stuff, no big deal there. The back is pretty beat up, though. It's not matching. So what we're going to do is I'm going to actually take out the tri-screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then inside here, let's see if we can get some light in there, 5, 6, and we're going to take it apart. So that part we don't have to fast forward for at all because I realized I was not recording and I already did that. So once you have those screws out, you take this off. Now, if you're wondering why I said tri-squares, let me pull that screwdriver out here. For that, this is what I'm using. And let's see if we can get that in focus here. Oh, there we go. So you'll see that little Mercedes-looking design there. That's actually the screw head on it. So the other screwdriver I'm going to end up using too is a Phillips head. And I'm just using this one for reference. I actually have another Phillips head I'll use, but I just wanted to show you that this is the there we go, this is the other one here. Now, generally speaking, these tri-tip screwdrivers come with the kits you buy, but I bought mine in a store that I like to check out. It's called Freak Toys over in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. That place is amazing. But here is, they had one of these in here. It had all the buttons. I always liked this style case. There's the front glass. And then I'll actually have a matching back. And you're thinking, well, it's yellow, but actually the back is blue. And then it even has the sticker that goes right here. So it had everything except that screwdriver, but the screwdriver didn't matter. I already have a screwdriver, so yeah. So through this process, there's going to be areas where I just fast forward or I'll fade into the next scene or something like that. Nobody needs to see me taking apart anything with the shakiness I have. There'll be parts that I can't edit out that you'll get to enjoy that. But I'm going to take out the 3 Phillips head screws that are actually holding the board to the front of the case. Okay, so I'm going to slowly lift this out here. There is still a ribbon cable connected to the monitor, but under here you'll see you have the screen with kind of like a funky foam and the controls under there. But on the screen here, there are 2 small, actually it's one long bar, but it looks like 2 small black pieces at the end of the connection. And those you want to be very careful lifting up. This is actually where it kind of pays to be a little shaky like I am. I can kind of just push on there and they lightly come up. But you do want to be careful. You want to break this. If you do, you might be doing some hot gluing unexpectedly. But once you got those out, you can then pull that ribbon out and just set it to the side. You probably could get the screen out without doing that, but I personally feel better taking it out because this next part I find actually very nerve-wracking. It is stuck on the sides a little bit. Right where my index finger is here and on the other side.
And you can use like a credit card or anything. I happen to have a plastic pry tool that I'll use, but I'll get that in there and I'll just basically I just start working my way around until it loosens up. I did one that came off really quickly, and then I had another one that actually I was about to give up on. This one wasn't too far away from that give up point, but I really wanted this case on there. So yeah, I just keep prying at it until I got there. You don't want to break it though, and you just keep working at it. So now that I got it out of here, you'll see it's lifting up, and I can just basically just give it a little more pressure, and it pops right out. There's not actually a lot holding on to it. It's just it holds it well, and you just want to be careful. You don't want to wreck it. You do want to make sure maybe you have a microfiber cloth or something, because if you get some dust on it, you want to clean it off before you put it in. I did get some dust on mine, and off camera, I actually had to wipe the screen a little bit. But from here, we are going to go ahead and put it in the new shell. I mean, we're done with the old shell, and we'll set that to the side and start putting everything back together. And here you can see it's all lined up pretty good. There was a flake of dust on there that'll get blown off later, but yeah, once we have this in here, things get a little bit more complicated, and you'll see as it goes along. It's no big deal as long as you pay attention. So basically, I'm going to dump out the buttons here. One of the things I realized was the package didn't have the membranes in it, but it wasn't a big deal. Like I said, I have most of the parts here. I have the membranes from the old one. If you're buying one of these online, something that just make sure it does come with the tri-head type screwdriver, and also make sure all the buttons and everything are in there. Especially with this one, the buttons were important because for this style Game Boy Color, the buttons were not your standard color and everything. So you just want to line those up. They do go in their specific spots. You'll see that there's little nubs on the buttons, and they can only go in their one area. So the start select button, I got lucky here. This particular case did use black buttons, so I'm very happy to see that. But it is my older membrane, because this doesn't use it doesn't have any actual like plastic buttons on top of it like A, B in the directional pad. The membrane is the button going all the way through. So I'm just real quick wiping it down with some water on a paper towel, and then nothing fancy here, and then just drying it off with the other side of the paper towel to put them in there. But like I mentioned, I got lucky on that one. If I would have bought this online, it would have had all the stuff in there. So now I'm just putting some of the pieces back in. The Game Boy Color had a infrared sensor on the top of it, and the kit comes with a blank plate, but I'm going to put the original one back in. And the nice thing is because that is a black color, it'll match the membranes for the start and select buttons. I will end up, as you'll see, I'll end up using the gray on-off toggle. That's going to bother me. I'll end up going back and changing that out and putting the black one in from the original unit, just because when I look, I can tell, and you'll see later on when I take pictures, you do notice it. But when you're putting that piece in, you do want to make sure you put it in the correct way. Well, you'll know if you don't. It won't let you put it in the wrong way. And they did a pretty good job of making everything where it just sits in there just right. But a couple things is one, remember to put your membranes on the directional pad and on the A-B button. I have done these in the past before, and I was kind of in a hurry, and you get the buttons in there, everything gets put back together, and then it's not working. And you realize there's a lot of slack in the buttons, and that, they just got missed. So when I'm putting the board in here, you do need to have in the directional pads and the membranes in before you do this part. If you forget the infrared part and the on-off switch, not a big deal. In fact, I'm going to accidentally knock out the on-off switch here and just put it back in as I'm working on here. But you just want to make sure your speaker's back in its spot, and then just kind of carefully move everything into it. What I'm going to have to do, though, is for a little while hold it up. So first, one of the things I'm going to do is just make sure everything feels okay on it, and everything does. But the problem is with laying it down, taking it apart wasn't a big deal laying it down, but when you lay it down, it's pushing those buttons in. So what I want to do is I want to set a screw in, and actually probably 2 screws in, or however many you feel comfortable with. But I want to put a couple screws in right away, and the reason why is I want it to hold it in place so I can set it down to work on it. I almost did this while working on the screen, and luckily I didn't. And I've almost done it a couple times, but nothing bad yet. You'll notice I didn't put this screen protector on yet, the front plate. And the reason why is I know I'm going to be setting it down on the front and stuff, and I really should have like a rag out here or something to rest it on microfiber cloth or something. And I haven't done that. Make sure your screws are not in the way. When you set it down, even though the screen is recessed in there and should be safe, if you set it down on top of something, that's a bump in your work area that can reach the screen. You're going to scratch it. That you just don't want to mess. I mean, worst case scenario is if I broke a button, which I don't know how I do that. If I did it, I could pull the button from the old unit. But you wreck the screen and it really kind of will wreck your day. You'll also notice as I'm putting these screws in, and I know I'm moving around a lot, but one of the things I'm doing is I'm making sure I'm putting the Phillips heads in, not the tri squares. And the reason why is 4 of those screws, well actually 6 of those screws, actually pass through the back case. So I don't want to hold it down with that. I want to hold it down with the ones that held the board in without the back case. That way I don't have to feed them back out to do this. I don't want to take steps backwards, which I'm already going to have to do because of the on-off switch, but that's not the end of the world. So I got a couple in there. I can lay it down now and the buttons won't push the board out on me. So now I'll just put in the rest of the screws, and once that's done, move on to getting the ribbon cable for the monitor put back in. Also, when you put the on-off switch in, make sure it's over the switch so it's grabbing it. So when you push it up and down, it is moving the toggle switch that's actually on the board itself. Otherwise, if you put it in and it's to the side of it, or you push down and break off one of the tongs, yeah, it's not going to do you a whole lot of good because it won't turn it on and off. So just be mindful of that when you're putting it in there, that it grabs onto that. So here you're just going to take the ribbon cable and you just basically got, make sure the black bar is still up because it can shake down and you might have bumped it. It doesn't take much to make it go down. So make sure that's up. Once you made sure that's up, you can just go ahead and slide in the ribbon cable. Make sure that it is snug, and you just got to grab both sides of the black bar and pull it down, and that will just compression fit it back in there. And I don't know why. I used to be very intimidated by these, probably because I broke them in the past, but now that I know you just got to take your time with them and be careful with them, not too much pressure, I actually prefer these kind of setups just because connectors where you have to pull them on and off, sometimes when they're snug and you pull them, you know, as soon as it releases, you have that break free point. And if you don't have enough lead on the wires, you can yank something. This is pretty straightforward. So now I'm getting closer. I did just take a double check to make sure everything was in there. I had things like the power button fall out while working, and then you get the case back on and you're taking it apart anyways. But so I just did a quick double check. I'm making sure everything fits fairly smooth around the edge as I push around. Some things can just, it doesn't take much to be off kilter not to fit in these very well, especially with new cases, because they're not really threaded very well, if at all. So when you push the screws in, the 3 Phillips heads, they're in tight. But now these, I'm going to do the tip. I don't know why I have such a hard time saying that. The tri-headed screws, whatever. Those, I will put those in, and I'm going to screw those in most of the way. And then from there, I will actually start looking at the edges of the Game Boy and rotating it around and tighten as I go, and then do a final like 8th turn on all of the screws to make sure it's tight. But yeah, first I get them in there fairly snug, and then I come back and do a retighten. And then a real quick turn on. Before I get too far into this, I wanted to make sure it at least came on. So like I mentioned before, being shaky, this is probably actually one of the most nerve-wracking parts for me. The nice thing is with the screen protector or the glass, whatever you want to call it, with it being as rigid as it is, the nice part is it gives you something to line up. Because as you see on the Game Boy case itself, it's a recessed area, and that gives you an area to kind of set all of it into. Now I take off all the adhesive backing, so this is a one shot for me, but you'll see I am pushing it like into that recess like I was mentioning at the top, and then as I hold it there I push down the rest of the areas, and that works perfectly for me. That has never let me down so far, but you do got to rest it in there lightly, because if you push too hard, it'll just pop out at recess. The last thing you want this thing doing is touching anything other than where it's supposed to be. You don't want it to collect dust or anything. If you see the light refracting off of it a little bit and it looks like it might be scratched or anything, that's just, there's a film over it that I didn't peel off. I generally don't actually peel the films off until it gets to a point where I have to. But yeah, we'll throw the case back on here, and we'll turn it on, and because I kind of want to see what the Pokeball looks like with it turned on. And as you can see, it lights up. That's pretty cool. I don't have a game in here right now. I just wanted to make sure it came on. But yeah, with that on, that's awesome. So now here's where I mentioned earlier about this. This is where I'm actually going to look at the sides. Because if you look at the side closely, and I'll get it here better in the shot, but you'll see I can squeeze it tightly closed. Now, the reason that is like I mentioned earlier on, I screw them down snug, but not all the way. So what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll squeeze the sides, and I will just tighten it up a little bit. As I'm tightening that one, you could even see by the infrared window it wasn't tight also. So I'll just continue to go around it and make sure it's all tight until everything's snug all the way around. Okay, now that I have it all snug all the way around, what I'll do is put the batteries back in and give it a test. Like, turn it back on, just make sure everything's going well. It's actually probably one of the best things to do as you're going around with it, just because it's one of the easiest things to do is just turn it on. But I still have that going, which is good. I wouldn't mind doing a backlight mod to this either, but for this one, I don't want to do that anyways, just because I want this to be as close to the Pokemon model as there is. But now, the last sticker wasn't so bad because of the recess. This recess isn't as thick, but now it's time to put on the back sticker. And this one, I just line it up and I hope for the best. I really do not like doing sticker parts, but you really need them. They really just top off the whole thing and they make it look good. I mean, by the time this is done, this will look like a brand new unit. You know, just make sure it's on there and get all the bubbles out. Luckily, you know, if you start on an edge and you roll it on, you usually don't get bubbles as long as you're careful. And that's it. The next step to it will really will just be getting a game in and testing it. But everything looks good. There's no bad gaps around the edge. Everything's tight. And it's ready to move on to testing. And what better way to test than go grab a Pokemon game? So I'll throw it in here, and like before I mentioned, you know, no backlight mod on this one. This is regular. So I'll try to get the light I'm using to kind of get in the screen here and see what I can capture. I'm going to speed some of this up too, just for the fact that Pokemon games are notoriously long to get to any play. But yeah, actually, as you can see, it's working. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please hit like, help out by doing that, make comments, whatever. If there's anything you want to see that maybe I can do, let me know. I do want to still do my retro boot, like I mentioned in the last video too, a part 2 to get that going. But other than that, you know, I just kind of pick and grab what comes to mind. Otherwise, thanks, and I'm going.